All right, we're here. We're live.
Cool.
Welcome to the Thinking About Computers podcast, recently rebranded. Our guest today, Shm Almeda.
Hi.
Shm is a fourth-year PhD student here at Berkeley. Shm's research is on the intersection of art and human-computer interaction, advised by Bjorn Hartman.
Mm-hmm.
Shm is also a visual artist themselves and has done research on things like how to make LLM-generated art better for artists, and how NFTs have influenced online art communities.
Mm-hmm.
So all sorts of wacky stuff that I don't know anything about.
I didn't tell you to say any of that, and then you knew all the things about me. It's amazing.
We're very prepared here. We
Very
do our
excited.
research.
Prepared, professional. Yeah. Shout out to my brother and sister-in-law for the mics.
Wow. Thank you. These are cool mics.
Yeah, we hope they sound good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me. I am a huge fan of podcasts. I'm so excited to be on one. It's like I'm on the set of a TV show.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really excited.
Do you have a favorite podcast?
I listen to a lot of My Favorite Murder with Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark, which is usually about murder, but also about a lot of other like true crime stuff. And I also just find their voices very calming. Yeah. I also like the My Brother and Me podcast and The Adventure Zone.
All right. Nice.
Do you have a favorite podcast?
Yes.
This podcast, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, the podcasts I listen to are respectfully trash. I really love a podcast called Cancel by famed YouTube star Tana Mojo and her friend Brooke Schofield. And it's just them. I don't even know how to describe it. They love to party. They love LA. They're rich. They're famous. And that's kind of what they talk about a lot.
That sounds really fun.
It's amazing. It's like watching two friends recount like the most insane night, but that's every night. Like,
wow. It's an exact knockoff of our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Though sadly, none of us have like dated Little Sam or had someone like write a song about how much we suck or something. But that's coming.
Yeah. The Berkeley version though. The little Xan of Berkeley and the
they write a paper.
The paper diss tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people complain that like the first 30 minutes of the My Favorite Murder podcast is not about murder. It's just two girls who are friends talking about LA. But that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, slice of life stuff. Pretty fun.
Yeah, I listen to the Always Sunny podcast, and they almost never talk about the show Always Sunny. They just talk about like each other being bad at parking and like,
yeah,
it's great.
I think it gets like, I guess it's people call this like parasocial, but I don't know. I've realized how much I'm really comforted just having a voice on. And like, even this morning, I turned on a streamer and then went to go take a shower. I couldn't hear them, but somehow I felt comforted that they were talking in the other room.
I do this all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that like having someone talking in the background is like very nice.
I've been listening to a TikTok series that recently blew up called Who the Fuck Did I Marry? And it's...
I love stories like that.
Dude,
oh my God.
It's crazy. It's about this woman who very quickly gets into a relationship and then marries a guy who turns out to be like a pathological liar and very good at it, like incredible at it. And she just recounts the story of how they met, like their relationship, stuff like that. It's filmed on TikTok in parts. In total, it is around 8 hours long.
Whoa.
And I'm 5 hours in. So
amazing.
It's exciting.
There's some podcasts like that are just about like these messy stories. And I think people are listening to similar kind of stories on like, you know, those Minecraft parkour videos that have like the robot voice that just talk about stories like this.
I can believe it. Yeah.
I just really like listening to these kinds of like sometimes awful stories, like messy stories, drama. And then do you ever like work really hard on something and then you're listening to something at the same time and it kind of like colors the thing that you are working on?
I don't listen to stuff when I work usually.
I have recently been trying to not listen to stuff because it makes me but maybe from an artist's point of view.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I guess it's a lot easier to listen to stuff when you're painting, or I'll also do like creative programming, electronics kind of stuff, where you get to like turn parts of your brain off and then use them, allocate them for listening to some messy TikTok stories.
Nice.
Sounds great.
Artful electronic something.
So I'm currently the TA, and I've also previously been the instructor for DESIM 23, which is offered through the Jacobs Institute, which is right next door.
Yep.
And it's design, innovation, creative programming, and electronics. And I'm really enjoying it because it's kind of like teaching an art class and having it in the format of an art class. They have prompts, they make art projects, they bring them to critique. But through those projects, I teach people about programming and I teach people about electronics. And there's a lot of silliness, and part of the component to their grade is that they put some emotion and creativity into what they build. I really like seeing people like start to get into this engineering mindset where they're like trying to add more features, trying to make their project faster or better. And then I ask them like, why? Did it get creatively better because it's faster? Did it get creatively better because you added more features? And kind of pushing them to think about it in that way. And I also really like people who approach it from a more creative mindset, because those are often the ones that I think are the most anxious about computers and anxious about learning to program. But by signing up for this class, they're saying like, I'm a creative person who really wants to learn because I want to use this in a creative way. And then to see people like it's undergrads in the class right now who from all different backgrounds. So to see like someone with an art or an architecture background like write their first program and then it makes a servo like move and they're like, oh my gosh, I never thought I'd be able to do that. Like it's like the combination of two of my favorite kind of experiences. So that's me nerding out about really being so privileged to get to teach a class like that.
Wow. Do you feel like you came from one of those sides or the other yourself before like ending up in the middle of those two worlds?
It's a great question. I think I've always identified more as an artistic, like a creative person. And I've definitely been drawing for much longer than I was programming. But I also started programming in like middle school, and there was no program for that in my school district. So it also felt like a rebellious creative thing that I was trying to learn how to do, like extracurricular, especially because I really wanted to make video games. I was obsessed with video games. So I almost like didn't see them as that far apart, like art, creativity, and programming, because it was all together in one place when I found out people make video games.
Yeah.
And I could be one of those people. I think when I went to college is when I started to see people who have like a really big separation between like they're computing people and then they're art people. There are engineering people and then there are creative people. And I still think that it's maybe just like a false dichotomy.
Do you feel like this separation of like, you know, maybe an illusion, but like artistic people and then like engineers or computer people, do you feel like that perception is the same in undergrad and grad school of like engineers? I know some engineers who are like, I am not artistic, but in grad school, do you feel like it's a similar thing?
I think what's interesting is that as researchers, we have to be really creative. I think it's true of all programmers and all engineers that they have to be creative, but I think that at least in my experience, like all of the grad students I've met here and in other programs, like have to be really creative and really passionate about what they do in a creative way. I think it's just a matter of whether they see it as creativity when they do that. And I think that a lot of people get stuck in this mindset of like, I don't identify as a creative person, so I can't see the stuff I'm doing as creative. And they don't have to, but I think it's really exciting when people start to.
Yeah.
Do you see yourselves as creative people? Do you identify as creative people?
I mean, I would like to think that as I'm in research, so I would say that I think that I am creative. I would not say that I am like artistic or an artist. And I think if you were to say, like, I am a creative, I feel like that has a very specific connotation, which I would not assign to myself.
Yeah, I would say, like, I think of research and the work I do as creative. Like, I think it's similar to like people who are like professional like writers or something. But I have no like visual art skills at all. So I'm not an artist in that sense at all.
See, I'm so fascinated by this. This is a question that I really like asking people. Like, do you identify as creative versus do you identify as a creative versus do you identify anything that you do as creative? And like, I feel like people are really hesitant to say that they're a creative or they're a creative person or like incorporate that into their identity. But like, we'll be like, well, a lot of things I do and spend a lot of time doing requires so much creativity. And so I use that skill all the time. I think it just goes into like the sort of perceptions we have about who's allowed to call themselves a creative. And then I also just like think about the power dynamics that are kind of latent in that. I think it pops up a lot in my work, which is why I like to think about it and talk about it. But I think it also is something that a lot of people can relate to. Like, oh, art is something I did as a kid, and now it's like, so not something I spend a ton of time doing. And so it's not part of my life. But I think art is a part of like everyone's lives. I think you're both wearing like really cool outfits, you know, things like that. There's this thing that we talk about in design and in human-computer interaction that we should see all of our users as experts, and we should see them as experts in what they need to do, and that they are the ones who know the most about like what they need, and we can design for them. And I think there's a lot of interesting conflicts that come in there because you'll find, let's say you're building a system for an artist, or you're building a system for, I don't know, a journalist, right? And we tell them that they're an expert in design, but they're not going to identify as that. Yeah. And they don't know what they need to design, and we don't know about journalism. And I think that's where a lot of like issues trying to make things for people starts to come in.
I think that's an interesting perspective. I feel like a lot of people, I think especially in tech, often kind of adopt the opposite assumption of like, the user has ideas of what they want, yes, but the ultimate goal is to develop something that people didn't even know that they needed. So you're like trying to guess like, a user may actually not have such a concrete idea of what exactly they're trying to solve. But it makes sense from the HCI perspective of like, maybe they do.
I think that there's a lot of truth to that perspective too. I think that there's like different categories here. Like there's things that they think they want. There's things that they actually want. There's what we think they want. And there's like what we should actually build. And I think sometimes we're blind to all of it. And I'm really interested in where those issues come in when it comes to artists, and how a lot of artists think that they know what they want out of Adobe or out of their drawing software. And a lot of times they're right. And a lot of times they're wrong. And a lot of times we're also wrong. And yeah, right now I'm thinking a lot about ownership and this concept of art theft that has haunted me as an artist since I was in middle school, making like Dragon Ball art, and also art about my identity as a queer person and a trans person, that it would get reposted and shared out of context without my permission. And this idea of like, could I ever really enforce people treating my content with respect once it's out on the internet, and how the internet has complicated those kinds of interactions. And I've been thinking a lot about like what I think I want, what I think artists want, what we actually should build, what's actually feasible to build. And I think that trying to work those things out is like really hard.
What is your sense right now from talking to artists, like how people are feeling about that?
I think that my sense in terms of what I think people should consider more is that people are a lot kinder than we expect them to be. And even when they're not, people are a lot lazier than we expect them to be. So we don't want people to steal our art. We don't want people to use our art without permission. And there are people who will do that. no matter what we do. Even if we say like, don't take it, even if we try to create technical ways that they can't take it, like there are people with the power to act maliciously. But when I think about the kind of, I don't know, machine learning researchers who are gathering data sets, they're not trying to act maliciously. I think that they're trying to take data that's available and that's convenient. So if we find ways to make the laziest solution also an ethical one, I think that that's my hunch where some progress can be made.
That makes sense. I like these like economic perspectives on like, well, computer science problems in general. Like it comes up a lot in systems, like what makes something easy to adopt, or like given the way that things are designed today, can a new solution like actually fit into the existing ecosystem? It's, you know, kind of like that, so that people like Lisa don't, you know, work things into their data sets that are convenient. But
yeah, I mean, I think along those lines, I feel like we had a salon yesterday on AI and copyright, where we had some people from the law school and talk about some historical cases related to copyright, some recent cases on like copyright specifically for AI. I thought you had a pretty good question surrounding AI and artists. I wanted to, could you expand on this a bit more?
Thank you. I was very nervous to ask my question. I wrote my question down before asking it, and it still came out kind of disheveled.
They always do.
But yeah, it was really cool to hear people who know a lot about law, know a lot about technology, and how we're around for some of the cases that I'm trying to read about now that happened like when I was like -4 years old. And hear them say like, oh, this case happened, people fought for this, these legal advancements happened, and it's the reason why Netflix is the way it is today, or the Spotify model is the way it is today. And it's really interesting to me that like things that they do in courts can affect the kind of technology we build and what they look like, and then end up impacting people's lives and their user experiences. Now there's a lot of musicians who put their music on Spotify and they get their word out. It's like really accessible. But then I think I've also heard a lot of musicians really upset that they only get like 5 cents from Spotify a year, if anything. And I think about like, oh, well, I want to solve that problem. Does it go all the way to the top to like the kind of legal changes that need to be made? And the question that I asked was a question that I'm genuinely really concerned about and trying to figure out, which is right now we have these class action lawsuits that artists are taking part in to try and get some justice for what generative AI companies are doing with their art, like taking it, putting it in a data set when they didn't want it to be there, what I would call like non-consensual content use. And there are a lot of things going on in terms of trying to figure out on the legal side, like what are we going to do about copyright? How do we adapt to these things? But if we fast forward like 30 years in the future, the legal advancements that we make now, and then the technological changes that end up happening as a result of them, do they benefit individual artists? Do they benefit individual content creators? Or do they become something that is still mostly utilized by big corporations? And the example that I brought up was how if you put a song on YouTube that is copyrighted, it gets taken down because of DMCA. And it's awesome that we have a technological solution for combating like non-consensual use of creative content. But is it only record companies and big companies that can really make use of that? Well, I can actually report other YouTubers who are taking my content, using my songs without permission. It has to get reviewed. It's just a lot harder to get those resources. If it doesn't get approved, maybe now I have to go find a lawyer. If somebody really powerful, God forbid, uses my song or my friend's song or my art without my permission, maybe now I need a bunch of really good lawyers. And I'm just a creator. I just want to create. So how do I help people with that kind of perspective? How do we build mechanisms that protect them? And I think that part of the reason we have so many mechanisms that favor those big companies is because they have people who build it for them because they have the money to do that. So I think that's at least part of the problem. So my hope is I can contribute to helping little guys with that a little more. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, I think with YouTube, I follow a fair amount of like all of YouTube, but I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not too familiar with the broad spectrum of art. But YouTube at least used to be like incredibly like not even just like big company focused, but like if someone put a copyright claim on your video, it used to be that the profits that you would gain between like when they had the strike or when they put the copyright strike on and when it got resolved would automatically go to the person who submitted the claim, which is bananas, because then it's like, but what if I win? And then creators had a ton of pushback on it, and then now they made, you know, a reasonable approach of like putting it in some like escrow, whatever. And then the other one was just kind of to your point of it would take like hiring a lot of lawyers, like doing a lot of this stuff, spending a crap ton of money to fight for whatever content you have. Are you familiar with the H3H3 claim or case?
I might have heard about it.
Okay.
Can you tell me about it?
Yes. I love telling people about this. So Ethan and Ela Klein, they have a channel called H3H3 Productions. They also have a podcast, very good, check it out. But they were primarily a commentary channel. And this was back, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago when commentary really started blowing up. And the big issue back then is a lot of the people making, like a lot of the people whose videos were being commented on would then claim the commentary videos, saying like, this has my content in it. And there was a lot of ambiguity over like, at what point is this the original creator, like the person whose videos in the videos content, and at what point is it like what do they call it, transformative enough for it to like be under fair use. So there was a lot of ambiguity around this, and then finally Ethan and Ela Klein decided to actually take this to court because one of the creators would just refuse to take down this copyright strike. And I think it took multiple years and like, I want to say like in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of lawyers for them to make this like what I saw to be a very clear case of like they would play no more than a couple of seconds of the video at a time. They very clearly had different audiences. But after that case, it really like set such a foundation for the commentary community that I feel like has really like the commentary community is so big now. But it took like an incredible amount of money and quite a lot of time. And Ethan and Ela, I think, were like, this was an absolutely horrible experience. I would not recommend this to anyone. Yeah, I don't know, but
Well, props to them for doing that though.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, people get to benefit from that now.
Yeah.
In some ways. But imagine going through that earlier on and having like less support and less resources. It is fascinating to me how our legal system works and how it ends up impacting people, but the amount of resources and time and work that needs to go in for change to happen. And then sometimes it makes me feel very small.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, what do you think is the best avenue to approach this in terms of, do you think it's like just making information more accessible to artists of like, these are your rights, like this is, I don't know, these are things that you can dispute, these are things that you can't, or that would be incredibly hard to do? Or is it like the class action? Is it the let's make some real legal difference here?
I think it's a lot of those things. I think it's all of those things. I think that perhaps this is just the view I've settled upon to cope with feeling very small, is that we can only hope to make changes incrementally, and that there's a lot to solve right now where the problem is just we don't know what's the best thing to do. And part of the finding the best avenue is exploring different options and seeing how those would work, and also applying what we know about artists and about users. Though something I do think a lot about is like stuff like robots.txt, which helped a lot of people keep their websites from getting crawled. But as to your point about information, a lot of people don't know that that's a thing that exists. And it's a thing that was created before all of the implications that are now carried with your data being web scraped and maybe being used for AI. And I think that we need more things like that, more things like robots.txt, more things like Creative Commons licenses, which allow someone to say, this is okay and safe to use. Because the more data that we have labeled like that with a piece of consent, the more people can get data consensually, the more that we can avoid taking data unethically. And I'm starting to see that all of these little things that we need to come along with our content is metadata. And so I've been talking a lot about metadata and thinking a lot about metadata techniques and solutions, which I never thought I would care so much about. I think it's interesting whenever you take a photo with your iPhone, it gets labeled with a ton of data that has no use to me. And it would be awesome if every photo I took could be labeled with like, this is a photo from Shm, like, and maybe some terms of consent, like, please don't use this photo if it has a photo of a person in it. Please, this is Creative Commons if I intentionally label it as that. And that could stay with it if I post it on Instagram, and that could be clearly displayed. And if somebody tries to download that content, it also comes with it. So I'm thinking a lot about those kinds of solutions, but I do also think that's a very small part of a really big situation, a really big series of interconnected ecosystem socio-technical problems. But I like metadata a lot because I've been spending a lot of time thinking about it. I think that's also a thing that maybe happens with grad school. I don't know if this is y'all's experience, but if you spend enough time thinking about something, then it's like this becomes your hammer, and then you just start seeing nails everywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you kind of feel like I'm an expert in this hammer. And then other research directions that sounded really interesting to me in maybe my first year, now I'm like, oh, it doesn't fit the hammer that I'm really good at wielding. Yeah. And I wouldn't even say I'm really good at wielding. I've just got very comfortable wielding. Yeah. And I don't want to learn a whole nother hammer.
Exactly. Yeah.
In sync, yeah. What would you say that is for you?
Like making problems distributed and parallelizable, basically, or like solvable without coordination.
Cool.
Data, all of it, data. Look at your data. Data quality is everything. If something is going wrong, it's because your data is bad. And you just need to look at your data or automate ways to find your data. This is a problem.
And I'm really interested.
I see it everywhere. It's problematic.
I'm really interested in how like metadata can help with that, and metadata standards, and like just more care about like when I feel like there's a lot of care around music metadata, and maybe that makes sense for there to be, because if I hear a song, I want to know who the artist is. I want to know the title of it. Maybe I also want to see the album cover. But because of that, we have stuff like Shazam, and if I hear a song out in the wild, I can go check out who the artist is, and maybe I can then contribute money to that artist. What ends up happening is I add them to my Spotify playlist, which should support them in some way. I think a lot about that for what I hope could happen for artists in terms of like, if I see somebody's art out in the wild, can I go like effectively reverse image search it and find out, am I allowed to use this in certain ways? How can I support this artist? I feel like we have the technology to do that. I feel like we have the ability to do that. But there's a lot of things that have to fall into place and get made and get designed and fail and rebuild before we can reliably do that. And I think the same is true also with music, that there's a lot to be improved there.
What are your thoughts on the like Patreon model of artists are just kind of moving to like, I'm just gonna get a Patreon and try to be supported that way?
I really like it in concept, especially because I think it proves to people how much there are a lot of fans in the world. There are a lot of art enthusiasts in the world. And sometimes I think we have this pessimistic or malicious view of people on the internet, like, oh, people on the internet would never want to pay for art. So artists should just get over it. Artists should just get over their art being stolen. It's not valuable. It's really valuable to people. And something that I was kind of humbled to learn about the NFT community, which when I started really interviewing and studying the NFT community was already kind of at the point where the bubble was popping. The bubble had started to really pop. It was on a decline and people were saying NFTs are dead. NFT artists were always a joke. And I went into studying this community with no prior experience. And one of my hypotheses was maybe that's true. Maybe this is dead. Maybe this is dying. But there actually are a lot of NFT artists who continue to have careers that are really like liberating for them because they get to be digital artists and support their work and their craft. They didn't have that before. And some of the folks I talked to, like they have an international community. And what they told me is, oh, there was no way for me to make money and have a career this way and be supported in this way because there's just not that many people around me who care about my weird glitch digital art or my creative coding projects. But if there's one person in Thailand and one person in China and one person here and one person there and a couple people there, and then they spread it to their friends, I have this group of followers that really care about me. And every now and then they give me equivalent of like 25 to like 80 cents on like random pieces. And sometimes I get like a buyer who buys like a bunch of my pieces for a ton of money. I get a cut every time they sell it to each other. And this is enough actually for me to quit my day job and be a digital artist full time and do my weird glitch art. This is something I could never really get off the ground in physical museums. I don't really even have access to that because you have to be a part of a world in order to get access to physical gallery display. And then the gallery would take all my money. They would take a huge cut of the profits. I wouldn't make any profit on any resales of my work if I went through a gallery, not necessarily. And what kind of collector at a gallery or a physical museum would care about my weird glitch art? But because of the NFT community, now I have this way of like sustainable income for my future and I can just be a creative. And hearing people with that kind of story made me like really humbled, like, wow, I'm really glad that you have that. And there's still so many like different facets to the whole NFT phenomenon, but to know that there are like little pockets like that gave me a lot of hope and made me think a lot more positively about the possibilities and how there are a lot more people in the world that care about artists and care about art and want to value their time than we'd expect.
Yeah. Well,
go buy an NFT. Well, maybe not.
I got one for Secret Santa 1 year for the Skylab Secret Santa.
You had an NFT?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you like it?
Yeah, I thought it was very sweet of Mingwei to get it for me.
So, what is your general, when people talk about NFTs, what are the emotions that come to mind? Is it very positive?
My first emotion is, oh God, okay. Oh God, I could talk for way too long about it. And then I would be like the people who talked way too much about it and made everybody really upset about NFTs. So I'm sorry for being an NFT bro, pro NFT bro. The one thing I do want to like, want everyone to like imagine is an Instagram where every time you like something, somebody gets 25 cents. And that these artists, one of the quotes from the artists in that study said was like, I was getting hundreds of thousands of likes, but I can't buy bread with likes. And a lot of people probably would have been happy to support me in small ways, but they don't have the means to. It's just not easy. It's not a part of the interface. And if it was just part of the interface, they probably would. Yeah. If it was just part of the interaction online, a lot of them probably would. A lot of them probably wouldn't. But enough of them maybe would if you have like hundreds of thousands of followers. And that same artist with that quote told me, like, when I started doing NFTs and talking about them, so many people unfollowed me. So many people denounced me. A lot of people were like, this is disgusting. This is awful. And also in those days, especially, Ethereum was awful in terms of the amount of energy that they were using. For as much as I value art, it was not worth the amount of energy that and the impact on the environment. There were always ways, certain chains that didn't use proof of work, that use proof of stake, which is just better and has a much less impact on the environment. But if we even just think of like, if PayPal were somehow built into Instagram, how many people would like it? You know, not all of my followers would like it, but I would probably be able to get some amount of income from that. And if art were full time, maybe I could gather a following and be able to support myself in that way. I dream of a world like this.
Yeah, it's interesting that Instagram doesn't have that, because YouTube has a sponsor button, right? Like at every video, I mean, the artists, like the YouTubers, can opt in as to whether or not they want it. And Patreon has this idea of like, you could do monthly subscriptions, but sometimes there's a model where it's like, I will give you X amount of money for every video you post. Mm-hmm. So it would be interesting if you could have an Instagram option where you opt in. You're like, if I like this creator's photo, give them 25 cents.
Yeah, something I've thought about is I budget about like $30 every month. I haven't actually looked at my budget spreadsheet in months, so maybe this is not accurate to my actual behavior. I probably spend more on art than that, but I budget like $30 a month that I'm going to spend on artists and art. And what if I could just put that in Instagram so that like every time I like an artist who has this sort of interaction set up, it gives them a cut of it. I would do that. I would totally do that. Though I guess the other thing that I did want to mention when you brought up Patreon, and when I think about this, like, oh, what if Instagram had money model, is that the downside is that it's still very controlled by Patreon. It's still very controlled by Instagram or Meta. And that as long as we have that centralization of power, that we can't really empower artists as much as I think I would like and dream of. And they're always at the mercy of the decisions that the company wants to make. I don't know if I can solve that.
Yeah, I remember like someone talking about how, you know, YouTube takes a large cut, obviously, of like ad revenue, but TikTok takes like a way, way, way larger cut of revenue. So like, even though people get paid to do TikTok, it's like, you know, very minor, but there's no real leverage for a TikTok creator there. Like, it's the place where the eyeballs are. So you're stuck.
Yeah, and to be fair, I know YouTube had a much worse monetization model. And I think part of it is because they were kind of the trailblazer in this type of content. Of originally, there was no monetization, right? In 2006 or whatever, people would just upload videos to upload videos. And then, like, more and more creators started popping up. They started monetization. And then I think it got to such a big creator community in such a big market that YouTube realized, like, we can't really be screwing over our creators as much. It's surprising that they haven't gotten... I mean, I guess CPMs have in general gone down a bit in the past few years, but I think now it would be incredibly hard for YouTubers to try to switch to a different platform. In fact, there was a whole move a couple of years ago of a ton of people trying to go to like Vimeo or other places, and YouTube YouTube is the place. Like, it's really hard to switch.
It's like Twitter. Like, I thought everyone was going to leave Twitter. Everyone was talking about leaving Twitter when Elon took over, and then none of the other things stuck because like the network effects seem to be too powerful. You can't like have
Yeah.
500 million people all switch at once, then it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I find this really interesting. There's some papers that like study this like idea of like community migration to different platforms and how that's happened successfully, but I think it rarely happens on like a large scale successfully. I have a Threads account. I haven't looked at it in a long time.
Same.
And I hate x.com, but I have looked at it recently.
Yep.
I'm a slave to the system.
Do you have examples of communities that did successfully switch?
Well, something I think about a lot is a lot of people moved away from specialized art platforms like DeviantArt. I mean, there's still a community on DeviantArt, but a lot of people moved away from it. A lot of people have this experience in their like their online artist genealogy, I like to call it, of moving away from DeviantArt, moving away from forums. Like maybe if you're a Final Fantasy fan, you were really active on a Final Fantasy specific website or forum, but that we've moved away from this and we're all on Instagram, and we're all on Facebook. We all have Facebook specific pages maybe, but for the most part, we want to be where the eyes are. So we're going to follow where most of the people are, because especially the way that monetization works right now, you need to have like a ton of visibility and you need to like keep people's attention. And as long as we're relying on the Instagram algorithm to keep us connected to people who care about our work, we're going to stay on Instagram. We're going to stay on x.com. I don't like calling it that.
I mean, we could just not. We could just say
Twitter.
Yeah. I still call Facebook Facebook.
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing Zuck can do about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or what?
That's such a real connection. That's so real that you said that. I think what's so fascinating is that a lot of researchers won't admit it, or a lot of academics or people who are really attached to this academic identity, like will feel like we're on like a whole separate plane doing a whole separate thing. But our job is to communicate, and our job is to know a lot about things and have specific skills and then communicate it and share it with each other so that we can all make more things. And it's all just content creation. That's very poignant. And something that I realized when I started going to conferences is like, this is a meeting of people who really care about knowledge and specific topics and furthering science. And that's true. But it's also just like Comic-Con. It's just like an anime convention of very specific nerds who are all friends and need an excuse to see each other and travel across the world to see each other.
Absolutely.
And like seeing the kind of people who are like so excited to see my advisor again, and like alumni, like meeting up with people in our lab. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just a cosplay meetup. We're all at a cosplay meetup. It didn't help that at the last conference I went to, I was dressed as the BART train. I was dressed in my BART train costume. No, I did not get the sweater. I went to BART Sweater Fest dressed as the BART train in my homemade light up BART costume. And the director of BART shook my hand and I did not get a sweater.
Wow. Ridiculous.
Please,
if any fans out there can get Shm a sweater, please do so.
I just want a BART Light and Sound sweater. I've got an alarm on my calendar reminding me in June to check for pre-orders.
Yeah.
The 2024.
So why were you dressed as the BART at this conference?
WIST 2024, so User Interface Systems and Technologies, 2023, because this was last October. It overlapped with Halloween. It was also in San Francisco, so it was very nearby. they had a reception with a costume contest at the Exploratorium. And I had to go all out. And I did get a trophy. I got a little trophy on my desk. It's a skeleton painted gold. And it's just amazing to have such a prestigious conference award.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. My desk is covered in my very prestigious awards, like my best talk in my databases class last semester.
Congrats.
It's framed and hung up.
Yeah.
Amazing. Congrats. I derailed the conversation with the BART train.
No worries. Oh, I had another question. Sorry. My takes are not great today. So some of your earlier questions, I feel like kind of alluded to, I think, what you do for research weighs on you pretty heavily, sort of ethically. I guess, could you speak a bit more to how do you feel in terms of more of like your greater purpose or sort of stress, existential stress around what you do?
That's so fascinating that you say that. And I have had a couple people like bring up before, like, oh, wow, what a noble research direction, which is interesting. When I started in grad school, I really wanted to teach computers how to make art. And I wanted to make art with computers, and I wanted to do more graphics oriented stuff. And it was when I found myself like ripping a ton of content from artists on YouTube and Twitch and their Instagrams so I could like build data sets that I started to just be like, I hate it when people do this to me. I hate it when they take my art and they use it out of context and they strip it of context and they didn't ask my permission before doing that. So that plagued me, and you'd think that launched me into this direction, but instead it just made me really depressed. And so I just totally gave up on that direction. And for a while, I really wanted to do research around my identity as a trans person and as a queer person. And so I was looking into like the kind of harassment that myself and members of my community face online and what I could do to try and stop that. A very noble cause, and I'm really glad that there are researchers and technologists and activists who care about keeping queer people safe online. I hated this research direction because I just had to face a lot of hate, just be exposed to a lot of content I didn't want to see. And in the process of it, exposed myself to some like negative content about me. And at some point, like I was put on a list of TikTok creators who are trans, and there is a community online, speaking of there being fans for everything, that will like try to like source lists of people to harass and then just go through the lists and harass people, or even have like events like, hey everybody, this is the person we're harassing today. And this is super fascinating. I think people should research it. I don't know if I have the stomach or the heart for it because I just kept like shutting down and not being able to pick it up. And then I think I wandered around aimlessly is what it felt like I was doing for a while with my research before I started coming to this idea of like, oh, maybe metadata is one way that we can help, and got really excited about that. And here I am back again. We are so heckin' back, and really excited about my research for the first time. I would say like I started feeling really excited about this research direction like I guess a little over a year ago, and it was really scary, but also felt like I was returning to something that I was really caring about my first year. And now that I'm here, like I'm really glad that it's a direction I feel like I can keep going in. And so, which is all just to say, like, I think that I picked my research direction based on what I emotionally could stomach doing. And that this work is so emotional. I don't know if everyone experiences it this way, but my therapist, who sees a lot of grad students, helps me see it this way, that this work is emotional, whether it deals with your emotions or your identity or not. That like writing a paper is emotionally taxing. It's all like mentally taxing, of course, but there's like I think an emotional, spiritual component to it. And like if I can't find a way to make it feel okay for me, I just won't do it. And I think that's also an ADHD thing, that I really avoid things that make me anxious. And I find ways to get really hyper fixated on like true crime and paintings and video games instead. So I feel extremely privileged and extremely selfish to have a research direction that feels good and exciting to me. But I hope that it could be ethically positive and seen as helping in some way. But I also really just want to like get stuff done. It's part of the selfish thing, like really driving me. Do y'all feel like you get emotional about your work or about papers? Maybe not even about the subject matter, but just about the topics that you're spending a lot of time dealing with?
I think like doing research is very emotional because like it's a roller coaster, and it can be going really well or really poorly, and it's also very like visible, kind of like, you write papers and people see them and they think, wow, your ideas suck, and stuff like that. So like I think it's like a very emotional, like creative process. So the actual stuff I research, I don't like. I'm researching how to make like backends of databases more efficient. So like I don't have a strong emotional attachment to how efficient databases are.
I'd say I'm kind of similar. I think it is a very, as you put it, noble cause to work for things that really, like, I don't know, make a very, like, concrete, like, difference that affects individuals. I used to work, I guess kind of still work in explainability, which is often seen as, like, one of the more, like, ethical AI fields. And I actually thought that what made me not good, but like I think something that I really liked is I actually was not very personally attached. So like I really want to change the world. I have really never had a care that much to change the world. And I think that it is, you need people who are super passionate and personally connected to a cause, actually working on it to change it. But I think that makes it almost impossible to like leave your work at work. And I guess I personally was just not really willing to make that trade-off. A lot of the emotions that I feel that I like seek out when I'm trying to find a research direction is more like frustration. So me being like, oh, everyone who's doing this is wrong. Like, I don't understand why no one's doing it this way. Like, we need to be doing it this way. Like, for it to make sense or for things to move forward. But at the end of the day, if my research doesn't get done, nothing will change, but like things will be fine. And being fueled by frustration is enough for me to keep going than being fueled by sort of emotion, in which case I think I get really like shut down or feel really like worthless if I'm really not contributing or if I'm not being as productive as I want.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that, especially when I was trying to do research around my identity, because I can't leave your identity. And it's something that I actually really prefer to not think about a lot. And yeah, I think I am more productive because I can think about what I'm doing as like, this is just what I found to do.
Right.
And that if you want to really change the world and make a huge difference, like that's a lot of pressure. It's like a great deal of pressure. Maybe there's sometimes like almost a comfort in just feeling incrementally productive and being okay with that. I think that is something that I've settled on as like really helpful for me. Is just like I don't need this to be the best solution. I need this to be something I explore and that could have the chance of helping. But that is also kind of just me getting work done. I think a lot about my rabbits. I have pet rabbits. I talk about them a lot. I sometimes bring them to campus in a little stroller and then let people pet them. I love them so much. They're my children. And they work like really hard sometimes on like breaking down a cardboard box. They get anxious sometimes. They get scared. And they also spend a lot of time sleeping and chilling. And it's just taught me how to live.
Yeah.
It's taught me how to live. I hope that what I can do could be more helpful to more people than breaking down a cardboard box. But like Hopper, my rabbit, who is the more active of the two, just like he gets up in the morning, he works on his box, he takes a nap, he runs in circles, he marks everything around the house with his cheeks and his chin, takes another nap. And I'm like, that's the way to be. Like, that's all I gotta be.
Yeah. So why research at all? Like, how did you end up getting into research and deciding to do a PhD?
This is a great question. Because I remember was recalling to a student who is, I guess, about to graduate soon, and told me that she was having a mental breakdown because she's considering maybe wanting to go for a PhD. And I'm like, I had the same mental breakdown. My junior year, I submitted a project to the student research competition at SIGSE, Special Interest Group Computer Science Education. And honestly, like research is just like another extracurricular thing for me to do. I had like 50 extracurricular things I wanted to do at all times. Maybe an Asian American cultural thing, maybe a gifted child thing. But I was like, I just want to do all the things that students could do on top of coursework. And one of those things was research. But I got to go to my first conference. I got to present a research poster. I ended up winning at that conference, like at the SIGSE conference. I got the best undergraduate research project. I was blown away. I didn't think that would happen. I didn't think it was something I was good at. I still don't think it was that great of a project. No offense, the love of my advisor, and I tried my best on it, but I think I gave a good presentation. I had a good poster. And then I cried so hard on the plane home because I'm like, I don't know. I thought I was going to work for like Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, because that's what every computer science major in my department did after graduation. They worked for Google, Apple, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon, Lockheed Martin. And I was like, I was going to do that. And I had a really specific view of my life, even though I wasn't even that excited about it. And now I had this new direction that I was suddenly like really excited about, and it made me cry and it made me anxious. And then I ended up doing a internship. I was really fortunate to be able to do this as an undergrad with Adobe Research in the summer of 2019. This was before my senior year of undergrad, and a lot of them, basically all of them went to grad school. And I was like, I would like to be like all of the people who work here at Adobe Research. I'm going to go to grad school. And as I was talking to and telling a lot of people like that, it was interesting. And I understand the reaction now. Like I would go up to like researchers and engineers at Adobe and be like, you went to grad school, right? Where did you go? I'm thinking of going to grad school. And their face would be like, huh. And I remember I once was talking to a group of them and saying like, well, you all went to grad school. Like I should go to grad school and get a PhD, right? And they said, Shm, you are talking to a group of survivors.
Yeah. Grad school is people's very polarizing memories of grad school. Like you get a lot of that, and then you get a lot of like, oh, I miss grad school so much. That was like, it never gets better. You guys are so lucky. Like I wish I had just stayed at grad school forever. Yeah. Hear that especially from professors a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely professors. Every single professor is like, I peaked in grad school. I feel like coming from like, I was also on a team in a company where everyone had a PhD. When I told them I was going to get a PhD and for a PhD, they were all like, ugh.
Ooh, uh-oh.
So do you think those reactions were warranted now that you're in the PhD?
I understand it better now. I thought that they were saying like, oh, the coursework's really hard, or like the professors are gonna be mean, because that's what people meant when they talked about college. And they were like, oh, college is tough. And some people are like, oh, college is the best time. And some people are like, college was awful. It was too much work. I thought it would be that. And then when I found myself just like crying under my desk, trying to like meet a deadline, but like feeling like the anxiety was too much to overwhelm for me to actually write, I was like, oh, this is what they meant. It's not the coursework's really hard and you get bad grades. It's like, I don't know if my ideas are good enough to let anyone read them. And maybe other things. Maybe they're thinking about other things, but that one's really hard for me. Like, I don't know if anyone should be allowed to perceive the things that I think. But I'm really glad that I did. And I'm really glad that I did end up going here. I really wanted to just live in California was another thing. As a queer person, New Jersey's awesome, but California and the Bay Area is better. And I remember dyeing my hair green the summer before I came to Berkeley, and my mom being like, are you sure you want to go to grad school with green hair? What if they don't take you seriously? And I was like, Mom, I'm going to grad school at Berkeley. I can have green hair.
Where in New Jersey did you grow up?
I grew up in Bergen County, northern New Jersey, so pretty close to New York, and a huge like immigrant population, I think there. At least there's a big Filipino community that was around me. There's a bigger one here, and a much more like multi-generational like Filipino Asian community here. And I think I could say the same thing about the queer community here. It's like multi-generational. There's so much history, and so it's the first place where I not only found like queer community, I found like elder queers who are like grandparents, and also like queers and Filipinos that are just like not fighting all the time. It's just extremely normal part of their identity because it's been for generations. And this has just been such a healing environment. So I really wanted to live in California generally. I'm really glad I got to live here. I actually only applied to grad schools in California. And if I didn't get into any of them, I was going to go work at a tech company or probably do something like that. And actually Berkeley is the only place I got into. So
nice, each decision.
It worked out.
Yeah. So as sorry, I blanked for a second. Did you have any fears, even though it is Berkeley, even though it is California, coming in to CS academia, which, I don't know, could be seen as like not the most welcoming to people who don't fit a certain mold? Did you have any fears about that coming in? And were any of them realized? Were they all...
I had a lot of guards up because I'd already had experiences at the College of New Jersey, a wonderful, primarily like liberal arts school with a very small computer science department, but it was very white and it was very male dominated. And a lot of those white males were like my friends and I love them very much, but they were also sometimes like super tone deaf and really belittling and not getting the whole gender thing. And it wasn't something that I wanted to work to explain. And it was something I got accustomed to just being quiet about, and like saving for spaces where I was safe. And so when I came in here, I mean, I say quiet, but I'm a very loud person, period. In my appearance is very loud, period. But I guess I learned to settle for people not getting it and to just be okay with that. And I was prepared to do that here. And I think whenever I enter a new space, I'm prepared to do that. And I think I was really pleasantly surprised. Not totally surprised, but it was really pleasant to find that there's a lot of spaces where it's just not necessary for me to have those guards up, and I can have higher expectations for how people treat me. And that once you've been treated at like a higher standard of respect, that you just like have higher standards of respect for yourself and for others. And it's like very empowering, and it's made me a more confident and even louder person. Because if someone disrespects me or thinks I'm smaller, like, it's like, well, my advisor's like a really influential, powerful guy, and he would never misgender me. So I know that you have no power over me. And so I'm really grateful for Bjorn. I'm really grateful for everyone in my lab. My lab is still primarily men. but they're awesome. And they, I think that they would fight for me. And there have been times where they have supported me in a way that made me feel like they are fighting for me and for my right to be who I am. But it doesn't even really come up that often. That's the best part. It's just really, really ordinary. And I got to figure out, like, who am I when I get to be normal as myself. Super nice.
That's awesome.
Shout out to the B crew. I love you guys. Bjorn doesn't have like a name for his specific lab. The space we sit in is the Berkeley Institute of Design Lab. It also includes some other students. So sometimes we say like we're the Berkeley Institute of Design Lab, and I appreciate everyone there as well. But Bjorn's group is just called B Crew.
Yeah, well, that one's pretty good. I feel like most advisors, aside from robotics for some reason, I feel like the robotics people are great at branding. But like Joey's group, I guess we're under the general umbrella of Sky.
Yeah.
And like in Vision, you're under the umbrella of Bear. But it's just like, oh, it's Malik group. It's Dale group. Like, yeah.
It makes B Crew sound pretty cool.
Yeah.
How big is Bjorn's group?
There's James Smith. There's JD Zamfarescu Pereira. There is Jeremy Warner just graduated. So we have Peitong Duan, who is currently at Google, so she's not around, and I miss her. There's Timothy Avani. There's me. Did I already say me? It's pretty small. It's enough that I can count on my hands. And we have a bunch of cool like undergrads. We have a master's student, Nicholas Jennings, working with us. My undergrad, Isabel Lee. I would die for this human. And I'm just listing names of my friends and people I care about, but it's kind of small. And we work with a lot of really cool people. See, now I want to list all my friends so that nobody feels left out. But that's
Go for it.
Do that.
Yeah.
We've got time.
No, I have so many friends. There's my rabbit Hopper. There's my rabbit Anya. There's my snails. I have a snail named Zebra.
Wow. We did have a question from a fan of which rabbit you like better.
Oh, that's really tough.
Yeah.
Listen, I like them different, and I feel bad about liking them differently. Hopper is like my friend and sometimes my enemy. Like, we're equals. He's very smart. He was with me through 2 years of undergrad and all of grad school. He's like my human son, but he's a rabbit.
Sounds like a favorite.
Anya is my baby. Anya is my baby girl. She's like my little baby girl. She is also like more so my pet. And like, I would spoil her and I give her food first if Hopper's not looking. If I give her food first and Hopper's looking, he gets mad. But I would give her food first, and she's sweeter. And if trouble has happened, I blame Hopper first. So it's different, and it probably shouldn't be different. But it's like asking people which child is their favorite, and they can't pick one. But they also should admit that the dynamics are different. The dynamics with the older children and the younger children, it's different. And I also think that they don't care what I think about them. They're so deeply in love with each other that that's become more important for the two of them. But I get to hang out around them, and that's a privilege that I get to do.
Also, hot take, I do think parents are the favorite thing. I think the main thing is that it is usually not, like, the favorite kid is usually not the same kid throughout their life. So, like, I know when I was a teenager, like 13 to like 16, my mom, I was the least favorite. My mom was like, absolutely not. When we were younger, my little brother was my dad's favorite. And then I was the favorite for a while. I think now my older sister is his favorite. So, and sometimes they'll readily admit it. But I think that my hot take. But yeah.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older sister, and she is an illustrator. And I learned a lot about being an artist on the internet because she was an artist on the internet and a digital artist first. I remember we tried to draw using our trackpads and my dad's laptop before we got our first Wacom tablet. And thinking about it right now, it was the clunkiest, like most garbage piece of hardware I've ever seen. And yet, like, she made like masterpieces with that Wacom tablet. She's a huge inspiration for me, and she's currently writing, not writing, but illustrating and doing a lot of the original illustrations and like narrative illustrations for picture books about like Filipino culture with Filipino characters and working with Filipino artists, authors. So that's really cool. I think she's awesome. She's also worked for Scholastic and done redesigns for the Babysitters Club's Little Sisters book series and a couple other like cool like children's book series. She's also a new mom, which is extremely cool. And still doing all this art and personal art and fan art and stuff at the same time. And so I think about her a lot when I think about like wanting my work to help people. My older brother is also married, and he has my nephew Aiden. So my older brother's Chris. Love that guy. He's my hero, and he's a really good dad. I think about Aiden. He's 7, I think. Oh gosh, I don't remember. He's starting to get to that age where it's not obvious how old they are. Can't tell, but he's awesome. And I have a little brother, Jacob, and he is currently a second-year computer science major at the College of New Jersey. And I thought it was very cute that when he was trying to, or when I thought he was trying to pick his college major, I had no clue he was going to pick the same one that I did, because I had every expectation that he thought I was super lame. I don't know. I'm his older sibling. I thought he would thought I was a nerd and a weirdo. And I was like, Jacob, like, you have to decide what your major is going to be when you go to college. And he's like, I already decided it. You already know what it's going to be. And I'm like, I don't. What is it going to be? And he's like, computer science.
Wow.
And I'm so happy for him. I think he's taking it totally his own direction, though, because he loves linear algebra, and I hated that class.
Linear algebra. It's a great class. You're wrong.
You can hang out with my little brother. He's a fan. He's a Lin Alg fan.
He'll probably be here in a few years if he keeps following in your footsteps.
It would be cool. It would be cool. I'm not sure what he's gonna do, but I'm already really proud of him. And I got dad and a mom and a sister-in-law and a brother-in-law, and we had a dog. I miss her. Her name was Grace, and my rabbit at the time was named Hopper. So together it's Grace Hopper.
That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Do y'all have? Well, you said you have siblings. Do you have siblings, Connor?
Yeah, I have a younger sister.
What's your younger sister doing?
She just graduated from massage therapy school a couple weeks ago. Yeah, very hyped.
So cool.
Yeah.
Do you think your sister thinks you're cool?
Hope so.
I bet she does.
Did not inspire her to study computer science, but you know.
Yeah.
Huge though. Like, I think just having a model for like, this is a thing that's possible to do and has entered my brain is like really powerful for families, but also for people, which is why I think like representation really matters. It's like, if you can just enter in the minds of people that it's like, you can do this if you want, like, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
I think. Even if they don't end up choosing it, it's just really nice to know it's an option because you see other people modeling it.
So just stepping back, it's I guess students are probably already deciding on where they're going for grad school. People have already gotten it, but maybe for the next cycle, for people thinking about grad school, unsure, what sort of advice would you give on how do you decide? How do you decide if you want to stay in research, just in general? How do you decide when to drop out of a PhD?
This is so funny because I imagined a student coming up to me and being like, I'm going to grad school, and me making the face, ooh, the ooh face. But it's definitely not something I discourage. And I think I take on undergraduate. Right now, I have a master's student mentees, specifically because I just really like helping people work through that. Like, if somebody tells me like I'm really considering grad school, I don't know what to do, Like, I'll consider that like a good reason to mentor them. When I really probably should get mentees that are interested in my research direction. I try to do that too. But something that I've been telling them, and I actually started assembling a list of my faves, is like assemble like a faves projects list, like fave papers, favorite researchers. I mean, we do this for like musicians. And so to figure out if like you like a certain genre, like you should have musicians and bands that and songs that you like in that genre. So I think we should do it for research genres too. I had no clue how many subtopics of research there were. I thought that there was human computer interaction, and then I found out that there's creativity support research, and I found out there's so many sub research fields within that, and different ways of looking at it and different lenses you can use in different directions. And all of those kind of create like subgenres. And to just like know and have models in each of those like areas where you're like, wow, this person like does research through design. They use like fabrication skills to make things, and they are also really interested in justice. To know someone who does that, and to look at what their prior work is and what school they went to, or other schools they've collaborated with, is like, now you have that in your mind. And that's extremely powerful, I think. I wish I did that more, because I think then my first year I would have felt a lot more empowered, like knowing there's people who do research that I'm interested in, that are working in the same like genre of research music, or like have similar vibes. And that I also think that seeing those as like separate things, like the how of how you do research, like there are people that do qualitative interviews, and there are people who do research through design, and I'm interested in those kinds of things. But there are people that do all sorts of other kinds of methodologies, even within the same subgenre. And being fans of people who do similar methodologies helps. And maybe I'm also just speaking as like a artist, like fan, video game nerd person, but to be a fan of people's work is where I draw a lot of inspiration and power and the ability to do my own. So if you go and look through a bunch of like research and you're not a fan of any of it, then maybe you don't want to do that research. And if you find something that you really do want to do and you're a huge fan of it, like leverage that power, would be my advice. Do you all have researchers or projects that you're like fans of?
Oh, people I like.
Wow.
That is people I like. Yeah.
That's basically the document I just started last week, because I was like, I gotta stop holding this in my head. I gotta write it down.
Yeah. Well, it's also I'm like famously very bad at names, so part of it was like a necessity. But yeah, it's great. And then like once you have this list of people you like, your goal is that like I need to physically talk to all of people. So it's really nice when like David Dow, for instance, is someone who I really like. And I remember I just on a whim, I like sent him an email and I was like, listen, I run this reading group. Would love it if you would come, like come zoom in and talk. And he was like, absolutely, yeah, like sure. And then I think I've met him in person like twice now. And it feels so like you get starstruck for a second, but then you're like, wow, now they're sort of like, you kind of view them like in your circle. And you really feel like in the community once you like slowly check off these like.
That's definitely one like awesome difference of research conferences versus Comic-Con. It's like, imagine you could meet Superman, but also Superman is kind of just like some guy who also really likes neural networks or something. But that's like the experience. It's like, oh my gosh, all my favorite people I'm a fan of are at this one session because they're also a fan of each other's work. Well, cool. We get to like be near each other, and that it's a lot. I know that there's a lot of like barriers to accessibility, and there's a lot of power dynamics, I think, that can create anxiety around that. But I found it surprisingly more accessible than I thought it would be. And I found these groups surprisingly more welcoming than maybe I didn't expect them to not be welcoming. But I think people are like, oh, if I email this person I'm a huge fan of, they're never going to respond to it. And they will
Yeah.
surprisingly often.
What other conferences have you been to besides HCI and education?
So I went to WIST. This is User Interface Systems and Technologies. I've been to CHI, which is Computer Human Interaction. It's the big HCI conference, but people like to say that it's kind of like several conferences happening at the same time. There's no way you could attend all of the talks, but you could maybe attend all of the talks in one of the subgroups there. So it ends up being like several conferences happening at the same time. I've been to DIS, which is a design conference, and I really loved it. So it's designing interactive systems. And I really love design research and people who do research through design, who design things to advance knowledge and to learn new things through the process of design. I learned a lot about more than human design, which is this sort of subgroup of design research where it's deeper than this, but people will do a lot of design projects together with animals and bugs. If you don't notice, I'm like a huge bug and animal fan. My partner Jake works at the Lindsay Wildlife Center, and he feeds like big birds of prey and like trains them and hangs out with like snakes and bugs. So we're just like super big animal bug people. And I got to meet people at that design conference that don't just like build sculptures for bugs and animals to live in, but use that design process to ask questions like, should humans build things for animals? Should we consider the structures animals build themselves as design? What can we learn about the ways plants design structures for themselves? And why wouldn't we consider those design processes? And why wouldn't we be able to learn things from those that we can take into how we design systems, structures, software? And sometimes they do that. They'll take the way that algae designs itself, its own like biological systems, and then make inspired designs or informed designs. And I just think that whole group is like really cool, and that asking those kinds of questions is really cool. And I think that if I try to look ahead to a future that I'd like to manifest, I'd like to do more in design research or work more in the sort of like design side of human computer interaction and computing research. And I really love teaching design to engineering minded folks and teaching engineering to design minded folks and working with people at the intersection of that.
Very cool.
So sadly, I have to make a homework for the computer vision class. So maybe we should end on just any parting words of wisdom you have for researchers, maybe queer people or people who come from non-traditional backgrounds in research, you know, people who want to own a rabbit, any of these.
The House Rabbit Society in Richmond is not far from us, and they have chapters also all over the country and all over the world. And you should adopt a rescue rabbit. They're amazing pets, and they can be litter box trained. A lot of people don't know that. My rabbits are litter box trained, and they're very good at using it. But about the other things, I don't know if I can offer wisdom, but I can say that like it means it's an immense privilege that I get to be in the position that I'm in, and I love reflecting on that. And I used to feel like I have to do like a ton of work to prove that I belong and to make a difference and to save the world and to be like a good queer person and a good activist. And I still believe that we should strive for these things, but that I've been humbled to realize how powerful it is just for me to be in this position and try my best and just be myself. And that it's like really powerful to just be yourself and to encourage others to be themselves. And so if you're scared that you're not good enough, if you're scared that you don't belong somewhere, or you're scared you're not doing enough, like being yourself and encouraging others to be themselves like is like really, really powerful in itself. And once you have the safety to do that, like you can do even more powerful things after that. But like take care of yourself and find that safety. It would be the hope that I have for everyone, I think.
Very well spoken. Thank you so much.
I try my best.
All right.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun. Now I can say I've been on a podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like a podcaster now.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like in the podcasting circle.
Yeah, the people from My Favorite Murder will be following us soon.
Yeah, we get a lot of guests who try and spin being on this show to being on, bigger shows.
Rogan.
Yeah.
Maybe not Rogan, but
It would be so funny to be on the Rogan show.
It's like with reality TV, people go on one show and then they just chain them from there and they make a career of just going on every reality TV show.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
of course.